Welcome everyone to this webinar, or Deminar rather, as we're calling it. I am Ben Nicholson. I'm the Director of Content here at NewsWhip, for those of you that don't know me. And with me, I have Josh Donnelly. Josh, do you want to just introduce yourself to the people really quickly?
For sure. I am Josh Donnelly over here in Dublin. I manage the business development team here at NewsWhip. So what we might do, Ben, is give people kind of a minute just to dive in. But before we do, have you seen the Barbie movie lately?
Yeah, well, no, I haven't. I know you know that, Josh. And I know we're going to talk about the Barbie movie today. But just kind of on that note, I think what I might do is quickly give people a little background into what we're going to talk about today. This is just going to be a 15-20-minute session, basically, where we're going to run through some of the things that brands have been facing. There's been a lot of talk about woke corporations recently, particularly from a lot of conservative influencers, but even from across the spectrum, brands being pulled into a lot of conversations that they maybe wanted to be a part of in some way, but being pulled into the side of those conversations that is obviously uncomfortable for a lot of them. Brands obviously have to stand up and make a statement on their values, but by putting that out there, they do leave themselves open to criticism a lot of the time. And that has happened increasingly, I think, over the last couple of months. There's been a few famous examples. I think, the Bud Lights, Targets, Coles's of the world. I think everybody's seen those. We actually did our own crisis report on that, looking at some of the coverage that was really impactful. And that was kind of where the idea for this Deminar came from, is we wanted to show exactly how that is done on our end, basically. I mean, that people have seen the outputs potentially, and I'll share the crisis report in the chat afterwards, or we'll follow up with it afterwards. But we wanted to kind of show the process of how that gets made, and Josh is going to take us through a lot of the things there. And it does have a real world impact as well. So this goes beyond just, oh, bad articles are being written. It does actually potentially have an impact on sales, on share price, on all of those things. So we're going to do a couple of live examples, a couple of ones that Josh made earlier. And if you have any questions, please send them in as we go along. If you have anything you'd like to see that you think we could build as we go, then I'm sure Josh would be happy to do that. But yeah, I think doing that, I'll hand over to Josh, and let's talk about some woke brands, some woke corporations, Josh.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ben. And I think, I searched the word Deminar earlier on, and I think this actually might be a world first. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, an exclusive. So
I think the problem is it sounds a bit like Demonar, which, I think is maybe the problem.
Maybe, a bit of a scary element to it, but a world nonetheless. So look, let's dive in. We can look at the technology. And as I said, or Ben said, we can, look at anything that we want. And again, we can touch on some of these woke brands. So where I wanted to start was just creating a search from scratch, because a lot of tools out there are pretty tricky to use. And NewsWhip obviously comes from newsrooms, as the name might suggest. So really, really easy to use and set up these searches. So what I'm going to search for, first of all, is woke Barbie. Now, I did see it, and I'm also going to say we have a hot pink in here to complement the search itself. And it's a great movie. I love it, but some people didn't. And if I was in the Barbie comms team or social media team, I might want to understand what is the impact out there. What is the chatter at the moment? Because there are a few, how do we say, allegations that the movie is woke. So right here, we can see the top article is from the Metro in the UK, pretty big publication, pretty big on Facebook, that is referencing the backlash against Barbie for being too woke and anti-men. So what we're able to do in a kind of view like this is actually predict how big that story is going to be. And we can see here at the moment, this article has received just over 800 likes, comments, shares, and retweets. So what we're doing is we're measuring this article with the number of social media interactions, applying our predictive analytics, and then forecasting how big that story is going to be within the next 24 hours, and showing where it's been shared to the likes of Facebook and Twitter. So we can use these predictive insights in real time to understand what are the top articles about our brand or about a category that we care with that are predicted to go viral on Facebook. And like that, we're also able to look across different platforms. So we can look at articles, again, measuring by the number of social media interactions, or we can look at tweets or zeets, or calling them now. I'm not sure, to be honest. Do you know how it's pronounced, Ben?
No, I think it'll probably change again by next week, potentially, anyway. So, and sorry, Josh, just to be clear, this is specifically anything that's describing Barbie as woke. This isn't all Barbie coverage. This is only looking at that very specific tranche of coverage. Okay.
Woke Barbie. So any reference to those two keywords. So we can add in the likes of Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube to see the mentions of woke Barbie within the last since June 24th. So this gives us a reference point to understand, okay, is this going to be a big issue? Well, these stories are predicted to kind of be pretty big, but maybe we want to get a bit more context. So what we can do is just change that time frame and look over the last week to understand where this story is in its life cycle. And this will help us understand, first, the number of articles published per day about this story. So we can infer that, yeah, the media is getting more interest in this story. And we can look at all of the top articles over the last week that are predicted to receive the most engagement. And interestingly, look at the top people and brands. So obviously Barbie being number one, but Ben Shapiro being number two. If you're not familiar with Ben, he is a prominent right-wing figure within the US. So out of all of the trending entities around this conversation of woke Barbie, we can see all of the people and brands that are being mentioned within this conversation. And what we can also do is look at the top journalists. So we can see all of the journalists that are writing about this story and creating the most engagement. And like that, here we can see the timeline for all of the posts. Again, we're measuring this engagement timeline with the number of likes, comments, and shares. And we can also see these social posts here. So like that, all of the networks, we can see the number of posts that have been put on these networks relating to this topic, and also the amount of social media interactions with these posts.
Okay, so it looks like, there's a big increase across kind of all of the platforms there, but particularly on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it. But I think across the web, as much as anything else, there's been a huge increase in this conversation. It looks like it started maybe a little after the movie was released. If you go back to the timeline, it looks like maybe like a Sunday peak, because obviously it came out on a Thursday. So you can see, the media and public interest there.
Looks like we can see that already starting to dip off a bit. So the number of articles being published per day, and then as well as the social media engagement kind of dropping off here. But as you said, a lot of this coming from Twitter, and I suppose no surprise there with all the changes.
Yeah, and so obviously the people have big platforms on Twitter. I know Ben Shapiro obviously has a big platform on Twitter, on YouTube via the Daily Wire that he's still associated with. So, okay, that's interesting. So these numbers are great to have, but what do they mean? What do they mean? I mean, how do we know if this is a big crisis? Is 30,000 a lot, or is that how do we quantify that?
Well, first of all, let's look at a similar issue. So. Here we are in the current life cycle of the story. We can see probably the largest peak of public interest and media interest has happened here. So if I'm wanting to understand where is this story going, well, I can look at another issue that was quite similar and understand what happened there. So last week, Maybelline also was in this kind of woke crosshairs for promoting a lipstick with a bearded man. And we can see here, the first 3 days, we got the majority of public engagement and public interest, again, measured by those social media interactions. And then we can see within kind of a week or so, the story had died down. So using this as a bit of a blueprint, we can infer that it's a similar size story and it's heading in the same trajectory. So this is kind of a crisis roadmap, if you like.
So is that what tends to happen, Josh? There's kind of maybe 24, 48 hours where the media and public are really focused on a story, and then unless there's another push, it tends to fall away after that. Is that generally what you see, what we see?
I suppose it depends on the brand's reaction as well. So, they're able to use this predictive data to understand which way the wind is blowing and inform reaction here. But before we jump to a few other examples and actually bring more context to compare these two issues side by side, we'll just look at one of our AI features that actually creates an interest quadrant. So that we can look at the top people mentioned here. And obviously, Ryan Vita is the model used in the advertisement itself. And they have a very high and public amount of media interest. But interestingly, Dylan Mulvaney coming back to the story here as well. And you'll be familiar with Dylan from the Bud Light issue. So we can see all of the areas where Dylan came up. And we can also see the brands that have come up in the conversation. So obviously Maybelline top and center, but then we can see the likes of Budweiser, Amazon, and Target also referenced within this crisis.
Interesting. So even though they have nothing to do with the Maybelline stuff, no crossover at all. It's literally just the media coverage is mentioning those brands as kind of the cultural touchstones that people are aware of these brands have also been dragged into this conversation. This is maybe another target that is happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So if we want to get even more context, what we can do is actually benchmark all of these.
Can we look at Bud Light against those?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect.
So,
okay.
For example, if we wanted to benchmark, let's say, Bud Light and Target and Kohl's and Barbie and Maybelline all together, this will help us in context understand how big is my issue against other issues. So like that, we can see Bud Light is kind of the 100-pound gorilla in the room, really dominating in purple here. This is how long kind of the issue has lasted. We can actually remove Bud Light to say, okay, not as big as that issue. Now we can start to see Maybelline and Barbie here, but Target still dwarfing that issue. So we might remove Target as well. And now we can start to see, okay, this more looks like Kohl's. Kohl's had an issue here for their Pride Month, and then Maybelline is about the same size as Kohl's, or even, you know, Barbie's even smaller again. So we can start to see patterns emerge with public attention and also media coverage with these issues. So this really helps inform how big this issue might be, if we can predict whether it's going to go viral. And this really just helps inform decisions, because these things might blow over, but as we've seen with other brands, making the wrong reaction here can really have a big impact. And again, just coming towards the Bud Light example, we might want to even just look at what are the top authors, the top websites, to get an understanding of who were the people that drove this narrative, what websites or the journalists that we need to watch out for should this issue come up, and kind of create a media plan for key opinion leaders that we need to be careful of. Presumably
also we could set alerts to be aware of that. So, you know, any mention by Ben Shapiro of my brand, or any mention in, you know, whichever by any of these journalists of my brand, or in any of these websites that resonates with the public in any way, we could set a kind of a predictive alert or a real-time alert of any of those mentions, right?
Yeah, exactly. So like that, if we wanted to see who are some of the key people to watch out for, we can see here the Western Journal, again, measuring these articles with those likes, comments, and shares. We can see the number of articles they published specifically around Bud Light, and even view those articles to see what were the narratives that got the most engagement. But if we did want to set up an alert for any of these articles, what we'd be able to do is actually have these predictive alerts that we set a threshold for. So if we say, I want to know when a story is going to break my threshold of, let's say, you know, 100 interactions on social media, 100 likes, comments, shares, and retweets, we'll send you a notification before that story goes viral, so you can get an early warning signal for any issue that's going to blow up. And you can deliver that by Slack, by email, to soon Microsoft Teams coming in September, and then also create distribution alerts, so you can really scale out this early warning signal for any of your team that needs to be in the know. So just around, and then
sorry, just to ask about the comparison points again, Josh, these are different timeframes compared against each other, right? So we're not locked into comparing the last 3 months for all of these brands. These are specific when these crises occurred timeframes that we're looking at here.
Exactly. So even for quarterly earnings, we could benchmark Q1 against Q2, Q3, Q4, and look at different timelines.
Oh, for the benchmarking the same brand against previous quarters.
Yep, or any timeline really. So Yeah, for sure. So just to round this out, I guess the really important thing we want to do here is provide context to predict real time if something's going to blow up and go viral, to compare where that story is in its life cycle, and also to benchmark it against different brands to understand, is this as big as something that came before? What did that look like? How long could this last? And for example, if this had a really big impact for the likes of Coles, well, perhaps it could be kind of a similar blowback for something of the same size. So
yeah, sorry, I'm just going to say, I think that you can then use that to inform your own strategy, right? So, you know, you could see the kind of statement that Coles put out versus the statement that Maybelline put out versus whatever it might be. And then, you know, you can see if you want to do something similar, if you want to, or if Coles didn't put a statement out, whatever it might be, then maybe you also let the issue lie, it goes away. Or, you know, obviously, if it aligns with your brand values to put a statement out, regardless of the impact you think it might have, then that might be a decision that you take as well. But it's important that this is an informed decision. And I just want to say as well, we've talked a lot about public interest, but we can actually measure media interest as well in this comparison view. So we can see how many articles were written about each thing, because sometimes people want to see that as well. It's good to have for context. Sometimes they resemble each other. Sometimes they're a bit dissonant. So sometimes the media is more interested in something than the public is, which can actually also be a signal that it's something that maybe it's not worth commenting on. If the public doesn't really care, the media is writing a lot about it, but it's not resonating with the public. Often the reverse is true, and the public can be kind of an early signal of the media might be writing about this in a couple of days, so we need to have something ready to go, right? I think that's an important thing as well.
Yeah, definitely. So look, I think those are probably the key things we wanted to show here. But for anyone that is interested to get some data around their brand, a topic that they're interested in following, please reach out. We'd love to share some more insights.
Great. Yeah, I don't think we've had any questions come in. If anyone has any questions before we wrap up, please do send them in now. But I think what's clear to me from this is it's obviously really important that brands engage with their employees, with the consumers, what they want to see, the stands they want them to take. Obviously, that puts the brand at risk, right? That's always the case whenever you kind of put your name out on the line. It's something that can cause blowback, and it's something we've seen particularly recently. And you just need to be aware of what might come in, right? I think the things that get covered now, it's a particularly hot topic. You just need the data to prepare. The more real-time and predictive that data can be, the better in terms of your reaction time, I think. And being able to act quickly, you need the right data to be able to do that. So I think we'll follow up with the crisis report and maybe a sustainability report if people are interested. But do, as Josh says, please reach out to us. We can do this for pretty much, well, for any brand or any topic that you're interested in. Yeah, reach out to us, and thank you to Josh for taking us through all that in a lightning quick fashion. I said 15 to 20 minutes. We've hit 18 perfectly. So do follow up with any questions, but otherwise, thanks for listening, and see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.